Do you have Citibank?
I'm winning, like on another level. See me, I see greater, nothing I'm afraid of, and I can have it all. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. Know you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. Know you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Fake friends get dropped like weight. Team love don't want no hate. I'm grinding, I'm shining.
All right, I'm gonna mute everyone. Akil, I can't. Okay, first live of the year. We've done it. Akil, we're back from Texas. Tim, you're back from Texas. This has been a very Texas-heavy year for all of us. And we are here with one of my students, Enola.
Hi.
You're going to introduce yourself. So I'm going to have everybody go around. Sorry. I was like, go, as if you knew what you were doing. But can you tell everybody who you are and what kind of drove you? Because you sent me a series of questions and I said, cool, let's just get on live and let's just answer them. So can you tell people who you are, what you do, and why you feel so confused about the college admissions process?
Right. Yeah. Hi. My name is Eniola Okan. I'm a junior. I'm from California. I go to a school that's really competitive, and we have a lot of students who talk about college admissions all over the place, but none of the students actually really know what's going on, including myself. And so I asked a couple of my friends if they had any questions, and I have a list here of questions that they asked me. So,
Tim. Hello, my friend. Back from San Antonio, back in the cold.
Yes. It was cool in San Antonio, but yes, in the roller coaster of weather that is Georgia and all that, is happening in Georgia right now. But I digress. My name is Timothy Fields. I am Senior Associate Dean at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am also co-author of the book, The Black Family's Guide to College Admission, a conversation about education, parenting, and race. So I'm very happy to be here and happy to answer any questions that we have. Always happy to be in the presence of greatness.
Wow, and look at that. I just happen to have my copy right here. That is so incredible. Oh, do you happen to have your wow. So that's incredible. And then Akil and Friends, or Akil. Hello, friend.
Hello, friend. How are you?
Star, our Word in Black author, Forbes contributor. What's up?
Same old same. Keeping busy, trying to fight the good fight.
Trying to fight the good fight always.
By way of introduction, I will say that I am I've basically done all the things around the periphery of educational access for 30 years, focusing largely on test prep, but also on admissions and access and completion, all of the things surrounding helping students, especially low-income, underrepresented students, gain access to and get out of the next educational level, everything from, middle school admissions straight through graduate school admissions. So that's who I am.
And a GWI faculty member.
Apparently, a GWI faculty member this year.
So everybody can check that out. So let's just get right into the questions. Do you want to do that?
Yeah. Okay.
All good? Okay.
So my first question is, what makes a good story or college essay?
I'll jump in there as I am currently in the midst of reading applications. We finished reading QuestBridge. So there are matches throughout the country. Congratulations to those individuals. We're wrapping up ED1. So I've read my fair share of essays. And, while the easy thing is to say what topics resonate. The reality is what makes a good essay, what makes a good story, is it to be personal? Is it to really come from your perspective and speak to your lived experiences or things that you want to share with the reader, knowing you don't know who this reader is, you don't know anything about them. And so as opposed to think about the reader or the audience, you need to just share what you feel is best. Every year somebody says, what's the best essay you've read? And I say, I didn't have any best essays. There were a lot of personal, essays. And so I try and tell students to kind of go against what they would naturally do. Hey, I play a sport, I want to write about the sport. Hey, I play music, I want to write about music, or insert whatever thing. We're going to see that from your activities page. Your letters of recommendation are going to talk about it. We're going to find out all of those things. So I encourage students to write about things that are unique to them, things that are going to add a different aspect to the application that somebody otherwise hasn't seen. And, from where I, sit at a place like Emory that has over 30,000 applications, at the end of the day, the essay is going to be the driving force. And we are admitting people because they're unique, because they're different, because we think they're going to add something to our community. So just, make it as personalized as possible, because the reality is a lot of people play sports, a lot of people play music, a lot of people do those things, but a lot of people aren't you. So you have to tell your personal story.
I would also add, a lot of students kind of lose faith in themselves during this process, and they will go online and say, what are they looking for? What are they trying to figure out? They'll go online, and therefore every essay starts to sound the same. And for me, I tell my students to do two things. One of them actually came from Dean Jay from UVA, and the other one is something that we do, which is Dean Jay said, go to your friends and just talk about the essay and just record yourself talking about, like, why do I want to go to this college and things like that. Put it in your own words. The second thing that I would say is I like to do an activity where we look over all of the activities, everything that's submitted, and I say, okay, you're standing in front of an admissions officer. You don't have, they're saying, okay, what else do I need to know about you? What are you going to say? So we've looked at the activities, we've looked at the Common App, we've looked at everything that's submitted, we looked at the resume if that's submitted, whatever. What else do you want to add? That's the essay for me. What you need to say that fills in the gaps, that makes it feel whole. And we have what's called, we used to call it a dump doc. Now it's like a scrap pile, where everything that we can't fit into like the activity section and other places, we put into one particular app. And that particular thing is a thing that we look at when we're doing the essay to say, what's not in the story that we want to have in the story? What creates that dimension? But I think the worst advice is what adults tell you to write is probably not. It's very obvious when I see an essay come across my desk and a student's trying to get some insight, like they're stuck. I can tell which portions an adult has written and what the student has written, because it always sounds completely different. So it should sound like you. And we have a rule of it should make you linger in the room and make this person feel kind of attached to you and your personal connection. But also just know, take the pressure off, because your grades can also speak for themselves. So
I actually want to raise a clarifying point. Tim said the essay, you said something, I'm going to loosely paraphrase. You basically said the essay is going to make the difference. I just want to clarify that. You're saying that after you clear the hurdles of academic readiness, however that's defined at your place, right? Because I think you hear a lot in the news, the pizza essay that went around for a while, as if that essay got them into places beyond all other things, right? The essay is the icing on the cake. If your cake is nasty, nobody cares what the icing tastes like. So you got to make sure that all of the other stuff, I would love for colleges to send out letters that said, you cleared round one and we think you are academically eligible for our school. But we got other things to look at too, because our place rejects 90% of candidates. So guess what? 90%, 80% of those are academically eligible. So just don't lose in this conversation that there's that sort of initial hurdle of academically eligible, and I'm leaving that intentionally kind of vague, right? Because that means GPA, curriculum, whatever, all of those things that are academic. And then you have, cool, we cleared all the people who are academically eligible. That's probably 80, 90% of Emory's class. Then they got to whittle it down some more using other stuff.
Can you actually, Tim, and sorry to cut off, could you actually go through, so there's academic eligibility and then there's institutional priorities. Can you explain the concept of institutional priorities?
And feel free to shut me down, like on clarify, like I made it sound like clear rounds, and I'm pretty sure that's not the case. So
No.
Yeah, so let's make sure we don't make that sound.
Absolutely.
No, conversation. It sounds weird sometimes.
Yeah, you are very much correct. In information sessions, I say that is an academically driven process that you have to, first, are you academically competitive in this process? And once you go over that hurdle, then we want to know who you are and all the other parts of that. And so, yes, that's one part of it. But then there are various institutional priorities, and each school has their own set of institutional priorities. Some of it can be just academic areas that they want to hone in on, that they want more people in the humanities. They want more people in the fine arts. So they're going to prioritize that for a year. Some, obviously a lot of schools, an institutional priority may be athletics. They want to build up their program. So that's going to happen. Sometimes, a lot of schools, want students from all 50 states. So they're going to prioritize Idaho, the Dakotas, Alaska, and places like that. And so, you can ask schools, do y'all have some institutional priorities that drive how you go about making your class? And so, each school is going to differ. But at the beginning of the year, we say, what are our institutional priorities? What is going to drive us making this class this year? And, most times it's, the same thing. We want geographic diversity. We want socioeconomic diversity. We want, academic interest diversity in all those areas. But, every once in a while, it's like, what? We want more students who are interested in nursing. So then we're going to prioritize this year, and we're going to look for students who want to go on into that field.
And one of my friends, Sean, said, like, if you look at a school's like first year profile or their news or like what they're putting out or what's featured on the website, new, theater center bill, they're going to need theater students to fill the theater center. There's also ways to get it. But the one thing I tell students is don't be afraid to ask the admissions officers directly. There's this idea that you cannot ask questions. And you can just, all these questions that are coming to us, you can also ask. It's going to be different for every institution. It's not going to be one size fits all. Okay, sorry. Now go to your next question. Sorry about that. I'm a Baptist, so I'm going to go off a couple times. Feel free to rein me in.
My next question is, how important are SAT or ACT scores?
Akil?
That's like asking how important are APs. And I think that's the thing that people have. Like one of the big challenges in this question is that all of the questions you're going to ask, the answer really is, it depends on the school. In California, you're in California. SAT scores are not important at all. If you want to go to a California public school. If you want to go to a private school, or if you want to go to a place out of California, importance is very different. If you're trying to go to Florida for college, SATs are crucial. Mm-hmm. So it entirely depends on your list. In California, they are test blind for all 23 public campuses or whatever it is. So I'm like, hey, cool. You may choose to never take the test, but now you have to decide if I'm also applying to privates, right? How much does that matter? If it, you have to look at your list, really. That's the real question. Because places like Georgetown has loved the test with a passion. Like, you want your husband to love you like Georgetown loves the SAT, right? Like that, that's how people. That's what people want out of relationships. The way Georgetown feels about the SAT, right? But if you're applying to WPI, so you really have to look at your school list and try to get a gauge of that. Being a junior, unfortunately, the advice I have to give you is play it safe. And ideally, you have a test score that you may choose not to use, right? In a perfect world, I can tell you, don't bother. You're in California, don't do the test at all. And if your goal is only the California public schools, then don't do the test. Never look at it again. Never care. Never ask another question, right? But I'm betting that you're also looking at some schools that are either optional or require it, right? And I look at it the same way I look at APs. You took APs because if you do well, it's something you're going to send, right? So if you don't do well, it's something we will never, ever talk about again.
Mhm.
That's pretty much what test optional provides you. It provides you the opportunity to go, cool, I'm going to do it. And if it goes well, I get to hide it. If it goes well, I get to send it. If it goes poorly, I get to hide it.
What about
It's
Emory?
depends on your schools.
Yeah, I mean, we're test optional, so if you send it, you send it. If you don't, you don't. It's never been a driving force in making a decision. It's just another data point. Do you do extracurricular activities? What are people saying about you? It's just another piece of information. I highlight that I've never admitted anybody because they had a perfect test score, but I've admitted a lot of people because they are interesting people. So kind of your academics, the courses you take, the grades you have is always going to be the most important part of the process. But test scores are not a driving force by no means of this process for us.
And
I do want to say this, and I hope Wakil can jump in, is that when you see test ranges on the profiles that we
Here we
have,
go.
that is just ranges. There's context to that. So Kiel, can you talk about the context of who the people are submitting test scores? And I don't want to submit a test score if I'm an African American female and I don't have a 1500. Can you get into some of those nuances?
Yeah, I think that a couple of things to pay attention to when you're looking at college admissions, right? Numbers are easy. So people put out numbers and then make decisions around numbers. They're like, cool, 1 is better than 2. So clearly this dude who's 1 must be brighter than, so they do all of that. And you have entire industries built up. The test prep industry is really invested in telling you, you need a test score to get into school, because then you'll come pay them for test scores, right? So there's a lot of businesses that are built up around these things, and they put out a lot of numbers that seem to support their position, which supports their business. So just be careful about who you're listening to, right? And I'll say that fully well knowing that I also tutor. Full disclosure, right? I'm also a tutor, so I'm telling you, if I don't tell you, look at your colleges before you think about hiring me for test prep, then I'm doing you a disservice, right? Now, what Tim is alluding to is good score defined in lots of ways. Meaning, if you have a 1,500, a 1,400 for a low-income student, that score is probably in the 99th percentile, right? I don't know Emory's ranges offhand, but I'm going to assume that a 1,400 is closer to their 25th percentile. But if I'm a low-income student with a 1,400, I might send that score to Emory because Tim understands it. Emory understands, here's a low-income student from a public high school we've never seen a score like this before from that school. I like that score. For that student, that score means a lot, right? So there are different contexts by which you can look at good. A 1,400 is probably the 80th percentile nationally. It's pretty good nationally. It might be the 25th percentile in Emory's pool. So it's not great when you're looking solely at Emory's pool, but it might be the 99th percentile for a low-income student. So you can break it down all these different ways and think about, in context, is my score good and do I want to send it? Because if it's good for you in 4, 5, 6 different ways and only bad in one way, I might send it. If it's low for Emory but good for females, African American, low income, California, whatever other thing you want, my high school, you have all these different ways you can look at it. And if it's good in all those ways and only bad for Emory, that sounds to me like a send. Also, if you're proud of it, then send it, right? Taking all of these other things into context. So that's what I would be thinking about when I'm looking at scores. I would also be wary of all these places that are talking about the percentage of people admitted with scores and the percentage of people admitted without scores, because that ignores things like everything else.
Yeah.
No college is admitting solely on the basis of scores. So if you only look at admissions by percentage with scores or not, you are absolutely getting a message that's not telling the full story.
I'm a big believer in ask the people on your list. Get your first score back. Now, I do tell people, if you've had a history of just poor test taking and you have a lot of anxiety, you cannot get your accommodations that you need if you have a disability, don't take the test. Just leave it alone. Like if you have something behind you that says this is not going to be a good thing for me, it's going to cause me more stress than good, you can find other ways to showcase your talent, right? But know that you might be limited in what you're going to be adding to your list. But I also believe there's no reason once you get your first score to not go to these admissions officers and say, I have this first score. I'm thinking about paying more to like improve it, or I could be doing this, this, and this. I'm thinking about submitting it. I got a question on TikTok. If it's in the 50% range, do I submit? If it's in the 25% range, do I submit? The admissions officers are there for you to ask questions. And if they're not willing to answer your questions, and they're being real secretive about it, then that might be a reason to get rid of that college on your list. It might not be a good fit. So ask the admissions officer with the contacts, sit down and have that conversation and say, what do you think I should do? Do you think I should submit? Now, of course, they're going to be a little cagey sometimes and be like, well, you could, but ask multiple people and have that conversation. And if you don't feel comfortable, just go optional. I will say, as somebody and I know everybody here has seen this as well, I've had perfect scores get rejected all the time. So it happens. You could go through this whole process, get a perfect score, waste your entire summer, waste your entire fall, and still get rejected because it does not usually come down to scores. This Lindsay Lohan, all things being, they're too young for Lindsay Lohan. I just realized they're too young for the Parent Trap, y'all. But this all things being equal, two people separated, blah, blah, that it's not coming down to an SAT score, right? It's not. And one of them is going to play the oboe, of course, because it's admissions. It's always the oboe. And another person is going to play something else. So it's not going to come down. If it comes down to the SAT score, the college usually tells you it's going to come down to the SAT score. There's not, the people who love it, like Georgetown, MIT, they are open about their love for the SAT. They're not hiding it. Okay, sorry. Next question.
Let me also just one other point. Look at, when you're looking at schools, look at admissions, scholarships, and then also honors colleges, right? Or particular programs to see if there are any differences about how they handle scores. Okay. Yep. And then also ask yourself about the investment of time and money to improve your score.
Yep.
Right. So those are the things I think are really important. Like it might be worth it to you to take it again, but not worth it to you to spend $5,000 to do it. But if you know you've got the GPA for scholarship X at college Y, you're just 20 points away for test scores, and the scholarship is $10,000 a year. If they still got test scores tied to that, and I'm 30 points away on the SAT, yeah, I'm gonna pay, to get $10,000, maybe I'll drop $2,000 to invest in $10,000 a year, right? So you have to. So it's a little bit more complex than it used to be when it was just like, yeah, mostly you got to take it, right? But if you look at these things and do a little bit of research, you can make some thoughtful decisions around, am I going to invest my time, energy, and money into preparing for these tests, given what my outcomes could be?
And ask them to waive it, because I've just called and had them waive it. Like a lot of colleges will be like, oh yeah, we can waive it. You got everything else, we'll waive it. Because once you explain I'm about to spend $2,000, they'll be like, you know what? We got you. We'll waive it. Okay, sorry. We keep interrupting you. Next question.
Okay, so the next question is, how important is class rank?
Tim.
The short answer is it depends upon the schools that you're applying to. We at Emory don't look at class rank. There's some schools that they'll take your transcript and take the number off of it and look at that. So that's a question that you need to ask the individual schools as far as how they look at class rank. What I will say is a lot of times we don't know what class rank means. Some schools have 25 valedictorians. They have all these different ways in which they internally do class rank that's based upon the culture of their school. Some schools don't have class rank, so it varies from school to school.
I have nothing. We can go to the next one.
Okay. The next question is, how important is GPA when compared to extracurriculars in the context of the school?
I mean, they're not even close. I mean, let me say, if you are looking at one of the highly selective schools, let's say one of the top 50 schools in the country that have admit rates under 25%, your GPA, the grades, but it's more than GPA, the classes you've taken in context of that GPA. Have you taken APs? Are you in the IB diploma program? And that GPA is by far going to be the most important part of the program. I tell people, if you found the cure for cancer, AIDS, and COVID, and you have a 1.9, it does not matter. And so your academics, what you do is always going to be the most important part. And to use Akil's example earlier, that's the hurdle. Once you get past the hurdle, then we want to know what else that you do. But, there are people who say, oh, I did all these great things outside the classroom, but my GPA is this. It's hard for me at these hyper selective schools to say that there's any amount of extracurriculars that would ever overcompensate or overcome not having a good GPA or taking good rigor.
I also would say context matters, right? So if you said, I have a 1.9 because the president of the United States asked me to take off a semester to cure COVID, like that's a contextual thing that you want to add. Again, it's a 1.9, so it's not going to usually matter because 1.9 usually means over time, right? But if you were, taking care of a family member, I think one of the things is like there's a college out there looking for you. So I think sometimes we get really, narrow focused on selectives. I know Akil's going to call it rejectives, but we get really narrow focused on that. And there is a college at which a 1.9 and a cure for COVID is the right fit for them, right? And instead of trying to focus on some highly rejective or highly selective college, you just need to find the college that values that. There's colleges here, I think a lot of times I'll see a lot of students doing a lot of extracurriculars because they heard from the top down that they have to do a lot of extracurriculars. But I can name off the top of my head 15 colleges in Virginia that do not even look at that, do not even care. So you have to know who's on your list. And instead of looking for colleges and saying, what do you all want? You should be looking at it and turning it around to say, this is what I have. Who values what I have? Because my biggest fear is not that students are going to get rejected. I can find them a college. There's 4,000 colleges out here. Over half of them take more than half of the applicants. My biggest fear is you're going to get into a college that devalues you because you decided to submit to a particular college. You got in because they decided it was a good day for you. And then now you don't have any financial aid. Now you don't have any scholarships. Now you're paying full price when if you had gone down the street, that college would have valued everything that you have to offer. So my biggest piece of advice to students is always take what you have and find the college rather than trying to construct something for a college. Because I remember at the end of the Netflix documentary for Akil, where that girl was like, I took AP Environmental and I still didn't get in. And I'm like, well, nobody cares about AP Environmental. Like nobody cares about that. But you should also just be doing the things. The best applications that I've seen come from students who gave themselves space to do the things that they loved rather than the things that they thought were going to get them into college. Find a college that values what you have to offer and ask a college, like, is this something that you value? If they say kind of, sort of, one thing that I tell students all the time, ask them, okay, what college do you think does value this? Because we all know each other. Like it's a small little community in higher ed. So maybe this is not the right college, but somebody might say, you know what, I'm looking at this and you know who would really like this, blah, 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 blah. Can you connect me to that person? Yeah, I can connect you. That is a better way than trying to manifest your life around one particular college and then maybe getting in or not getting in.
I would also just want to add one thing to that is be careful. GPA doesn't mean anything. Like you're in California where they have the A through G requirements for the UCs, right? And I'm not even sure if they use anything outside of A through G to calculate GPA. So your high school transcript shows one number that might not be the, like if you look at 5 other colleges, they probably all have different GPAs for you because they consider different classes. Some recalculate, some don't. Some look at weighted, some don't. So be careful when saying GPA because GPA don't always mean GPA, right? Because a lot of places, especially places that gets a huge diversity of applicants, Dean J is a great follow on social media. Also Georgia Tech, because they both did a thing on GPA. Like some schools have an 11-point scale. How are they going to manage a school with an 11-point scale versus yours with a 4.0 versus the other one with a 5 or 6, right? So lots of colleges are recalculating. So GPA is kind of a false number. It's again one of those numbers that are easy to put down on paper that once you get into the admissions process, in some places don't mean anything. Whereas in other places it does. I believe CUNY used to have a grid on their website. CUNY, which is City College of New York City, used to have a grid on their website. GPA this plus SAT that meant admitted or not. It was straight up, straightforward. They didn't look at nothing else. There are colleges like that. And then there are other colleges like the UCs that are like, we look at 14 factors and have a formula to like, so, you know, all of those things play a different role. So just recognize that the more you try to turn it into a mechanical factor that goes, here's the formula for getting in, the less accurate that is. Because the formula is different for every college and for every student because of where their high school, what their high school is doing.
And there's also, I keep on trying to like put it in this, there's also this amazing book. I don't know who wrote it. I think it's Timothy Fields. It's called The Black Family's Guide to College Admissions. I just found it behind me. That kind of goes through some of the things that you should be. Wow, if only we had the book's author. Is this your book?
I think so. I can't. It's a little small, but I can't. Yes. That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah. Okay. I kept on trying to, like, as Akil was talking, like, here's a book that we could also be using here. Just subtle plug. Okay, next question, friend. And feel free to also change your questions as you go if you have a question you want to throw in.
Okay, yeah. The next question on my list is, how important are letters of recommendation and which types of references are better or tend to reflect better on applications?
People who know you. Listen, I live in DC. I had a student actually text me about like a politician. I was like, well, do you know the politician? No, not really. Okay, who do you actually know? Oh, I know like the politician's assistant. The person that knows you should write the letter of recommendation. Because a standard like, oh, so-and-so did da-da-da-da. That for me, I tend to sit down with my students and I say, who's gonna, again, we look at the whole thing as a story. Who can fill in the gap that you're trying to fill? Oh, I did have a hard time in this chemistry class, but I stayed after school. I worked it, I blah, blah. That chemistry teacher is a great person to write a letter of recommendation. Because when I was applying to college, they were like, my chemistry teacher wrote, she got a C, and let me tell you, she should have gotten an F. She really should have gotten an F. But she stayed after school. She worked hard. She's never going to be a chemistry major, but she was dedicated to getting that C. So for me, I don't believe in like teacher, employer, politics. There's a certain person who has more influence. But Tim, take it away.
You know, I echo everything you say. The only thing that I would add is, one, what are the requirements? What letters of recommendation require? College counselor, the amount of teachers, do they need to be your senior year? So follow those instructions as far as who are the people. Also, some schools say we only want the ones we ask for, don't send any more. So following instructions is the first part. The other part is if you are going to send additional letter of recommendation beyond what they ask, if they allow that, is make sure it's somebody who's going to provide some additional information. If you send 6 letters of recommendation from teachers, they're all going to say how smart you are. But you might have a coach, you might have a supervisor, you might have somebody else who's going to provide a different perspective that could be helpful. Mm-hmm. What I found is anytime we receive over 5 letters of recommendations, they're trying to overcompensate for what they didn't do inside the classroom. So make sure they're people who know you, can speak to your character, and can add new information about you.
Mm-hmm.
let me throw in there, make it easy for your recommenders.
Thank you.
Like, put your brag sheet together. If you're going to ask a teacher, maybe even save your papers and like, don't. I've been asked to write letters of recommendation and struggle to remember the student, right? A, I have a bad memory. B, sometimes it's a while ago, right? So make sure you make it easy for your recommenders. I would start, keeping track of stuff. Now you're in 11th grade, you can write down, in this class I did this, the teacher loved this project, and just keep a track for us. Like, hey, if I ask her at the end of the year, I want to be able to just give her a packet and make it easy so that she can write something which is thoughtful, personal, and really reflects that she knows me.
When we do the emails out in our group, we'll say, I'm asking you to write a letter of recommendation because I enjoyed your class, one, but also I remember how we blah, 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 blah. Do you think, and we usually have this in-person conversation, do you think that you feel comfortable writing about that? Because they might be like, I don't remember that at all. I don't remember that, right? But if you give them the stuff, they're like, yeah, now I remember that. So you do want to be prepared, and you also want to give them context of what you want them to add contextually to your application. I don't like to give people a blank slate and say, hope you do a good job. I'd like to say, this is the direction. Do you think you can go in that direction? Yay. But don't get it from somebody you don't know. Let me tell you that.
And don't ask your test prep tutor or people you paid. It's weird. People have asked me.
Okay, well, now I was going to ask you to write my letter of recommendation, Akil, but I guess not. Like, okay.
Okay. My next question is, what advantages do IB courses or AP courses provide from an admissions viewpoint? How helpful are they?
Tim, this is all you.
I mean, it all comes back to context, what type of schools that you're applying to. I mean, we don't want to sound like a broken record, but there are 4,000 schools, 2,000 of them offer bachelor's degrees. Over 60% of those have admit rates over 60%. And so depending upon the school, they may just want to say, are you prepared? Do you have good grades? But if we're talking about these selective, rejective, whatever adjective we want to use, yes, they matter, because we want to know, have you challenged yourself within the context of your high school, taking the most challenging courses, whatever they may be. What I will say, if your school has an IB curriculum, are you in the diploma program? If you're just kind of cherry picking, you're not going to kind of get the same kind of, preparation as you are if you are in the diploma program. If you're in an AP school, we're not counting APs. We're not saying you need to take X number of APs, but we do want to know that you have taken, APs if they are offered, at your school, or there might be dual enrollment if that's what's involved at your school. So yes, if we're gonna, in the context of the more selective schools, they absolutely matter. Because if you tell me, back to earlier point, we said, well, I have a 4.0, that's just a number. It means nothing to me. What classes you take to achieve that GPA? What's the grading scale? What other courses were offered? Did you challenge yourself? So these are all the questions that in admissions officers we ask. So when we see a number, it all comes down to what classes did you take? And a lot of times, people are like, who am I competing against? You're not competing against anybody. If you wanted to say, who am I competing against? You're competing against the rigor within your school. If you went to a very well-resourced schools that has APs, IBs, and you just took the basic level courses and tell me you have a 4.0, then you're not going to be competitive. Not because you didn't have all A's, because you didn't challenge yourself based upon what was available to you.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times students will take courses for the sake of taking it and then resent later. And for me, high school is kind of like college in the sense you should be taking courses that you think you're going to be interested in. Like, you should be stretching yourself in areas that you feel like you're going to be interested in. An IB diploma might be right for you, but if you're like, you know what, IB diploma is not right for me, there's still a college out there that's going to take you, right? So find opportunities to explore the things that you think you're interested in before it's going to cost you $20,000 to $30,000 to $40,000, because I've had a lot of students, thank goodness, who've gone down a whole career of nursing or a whole career of medicine or a whole career of law in high school and said, this ain't for me. I wish I had that opportunity when I was a young girl thinking about becoming a lawyer, because had I been exposed to it earlier, I would have known that a policy direction was a better direction. So again, don't make decisions based on what's going to look good for the college. Make decisions and then find the college. Does that make sense? Find the college that actually values what you have to offer. So if you're not doing IB diploma, there's still a college out there. If you are doing IB diploma, there's a college out there. Now, I will say, know if a college is a math snob, because we can go into the whole, I love calculus like it's my job, because some of y'all are dropping pre-calc to go into stat because you think it's going to be easy or easy A, when that other college loves them some calculus. And so if you're making those decisions, also make it in the context of those colleges. So ask the colleges, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, what do you think? It's not too early to be talking to the colleges that you're interested in. But if they're always saying, no, I don't think you should do that, no, I don't think you should do that, remove them from your list and find a college that says, we like that about you, we enjoy that about you.
What if a student goes into high school not knowing what they want to do or who they want to be when they grow up?
That's 99.9967% of teenagers. I mean, come on, like hell, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm 50.
Akil has like a new thing every single. I'm a lawyer. Akil is an architect. He has not built anything. I don't even think he built the shelf behind him.
I'm not licensed as an architect. I have a degree in architecture.
He did not even build that shelf. Okay, Tim, what did you do your major in?
Psychology.
Listen,
so there's two answers to your question. Let me frame the answer to your question. The answer to your question is tied into the answer Jen gave you, sort of to other questions, right? Is no one expects you to know everything as a 15, 14, 13, 17-year-old, whatever the heck the ages are these days, right? So your job in high school, let's tie together all the things that we've said today. Tim has said, challenge yourself. Just take that part of it. Forget the specifics of AP versus IB versus whatever. Challenge yourself academically, right? Jen has said, do the things you love. Put those two things together. In high school, do the things you like and are interested in and will challenge you. And then find a place that gives you the opportunity to continue to pursue what you love, what will challenge you, and what will help you move forward. That might be the brand name college you've heard of a whole lot. It might be the place you've never heard of, right? I went to Pratt Institute and have a bachelor's of architecture, right? Have you ever heard of Pratt Institute?
I have, because
probably not. I'm betting you haven't, right? Because it's a small architecture school. It's an art and design school in Brooklyn. If I wanted to pursue architecture, it was a great place to be. Turns out I didn't really want to do architecture, but that's a whole different story, right? So what you have to figure out is how to marry exploring, learning, and opportunities and challenging myself. And then obviously, since we do want to get into college and we do want someone to help pay for it, we have to also consider things that might improve our chances of admissions. But I think that shouldn't drive your decision making in high school.
There's a lot of colleges that offer interdisciplinary because they know that having multiple skills out of multiple disciplines is the future, right? Like a lot of us just don't end up doing our major. If you ask me at 16, am I going to be a lawyer? Yes, right? If you went to my 16-year-old, then I would say my 16-year-old self would be very disappointed to find out that I'm doing math on a daily basis, right? So I think one of the things is just know that there's opportunities out there. And you don't have to, I think what happens is we're going top down, where it's like you have to have this perfect application and to get into this one particular small set of colleges. When there's a college out there that does not even care what direction and would like to help you figure it out, because that's what college is about. as opposed to you being stubborn. I personally wish I was not as stubborn going into college, that I didn't think, oh no, I'm going into law school. I'm going to, no, I'm not considering anything else. I wish I had thought about the possibility of other things, but I didn't. And now I have a law degree that I don't really use. So it's going to be okay. I think it's actually worse. I would say this, as somebody who was very mission and driven and purpose oriented, I regret not being flexible. I regret not taking time off. I regret not thinking about it and going on autopilot. And I don't regret going to law school because that was fun, but I do regret not taking a beat. Okay. What's the next question you got?
The next question is, it was going to be what makes a college application stand out, but I wanted to talk more about being stubborn in your career path. I know a couple of my friends have the same issue that I have, where I wanted to be a doctor since I was like maybe 5, and I haven't changed that vision at all, especially because my parents both work in the medical field. But we have this kind of viewpoint where we have to always constantly be doing something to reach our goals, but we haven't really looked at other goals or other career paths. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Tim, I see you shaking your head.
I mean, so much to say here. I mean, what I will say is, a lot of high school students only know about 7 professions. They know I want to be a lawyer. They know I want to be a doctor. They know I want to be an engineer. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're going to branch out and say, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, or maybe something that extends of that. But like once you get on a college campus, or you get exposed to like the many different job fields that are out there, there become things that you are maybe more interested in and passionate about. One of the realities is most of the jobs that you will work in your lifetime don't even exist yet. And so, you just need to like keep an open mind. If you're passionate about the idea of going into medicine, you should absolutely pursue that. But you should, once you get to college, particularly if it's a liberal arts college, explore different areas, take different classes, and, kind of see where you want to go, to like kind of give yourself that grace to say, oh, I just don't have to go into this profession because this is what I said I was going to do since I was 6 years old, because there's so many other professions that are out there.
I would recommend talking to somebody who's been like, when somebody comes to me and they say, I want to be a lawyer, talk to me, right? Because I'm no longer a lawyer, and also talk to the people who stayed in law. So like have conversations with people in the profession, talk to the people who stayed, talk to the people who left, figure out why the people who stayed, why the people who left, right? And if you might hear from a lot of lawyers or doctors or engineers or whatever, I'm only here because the debt forces me to be here. I'm only here because like Sally Mae and I are real connected, and this debt is not going to leave me unless I'm working. But you might hear, I'm here because I found my specialty, right? That's going to provide you some insight as, oh, not only do I need to become a doctor, but I need to find a specialty that I love, an opportunity within being a doctor, but also be flexible and agile. I think, Akil, I cut you off.
So I would add to that I think I really like what Tim said, because there's when I was in high school, there was no internet. Think about all the jobs, like there was no Google.
There wasn't.
Amazon.
It was
like
wild.
The biggest employers in the world. There were no cell phones.
It's
Think about
5
all
o'clock
these
right
tech
now
jobs.
on
The
Sunday.
companies didn't even exist when I was in high school, right? So what that job you're going to do is going to shift, right? Maybe when you're finished college, we won't be doing real life medicine anymore. It'll all be telemedicine, and so you got to learn to medicine over the internet, right? So all of these. So build your skill set more than the jobs, right? Learn the profession. That's really important. Find the person who has the job you think you want, and find out as much as you can. I found out in the middle of pursuing my degree in architecture that I actually wanted to be an architect in the 1800s. Turns out that like being in college in 1995 makes it really difficult to be the architect I heard of in the 1800s, right? Like I want to be Frank Lloyd Wright. I want to sit around a table with a family, design their home, watch it built from the ground up. Yeah, that's not how architecture worked in the 1990s. So it kind of sucked that I wanted a job that doesn't exist. I wanted to be a TV architect, right? So don't get sucked into the TV end of these things that give a glorified Instagram viewpoint of a job as opposed to the actuality of the job. So do more research. So I'd say two things really to walk away from all of this yammering, right? Do your research about what the actuality of the profession looks like currently, right? And then be flexible in building your skills so you have a wide range of skill sets and you can pivot when you get there. Right? I am using skills I learned in School of Architecture, which is largely design. Every time I do a presentation, it's design skills that I'm bringing to play. So it wasn't useless to have gone to School for Architecture. It's just the title of my degree doesn't align with the work that I do every day.
And I'll just add one thing, and you know, you may not know this, and maybe you know as you continue to mature, you'll find this out. But you know, also what matters to you. There are some people that money matters a lot, and they are driven by the ability to make money. There are other people who I want to make a difference and an impact in the world. Obviously, you need money to survive, but you know you have to figure out where that kind of comes into all of this, because that is also a big part of what you want to do. You know, obviously, you could be a billionaire. Or, you know, you could say, you know what, if I can make $200,000 a year and I could be happy, or find out what that is. But, you know, ultimately, peace of mind, happiness kind of wins out. But some people are really driven by money, and they'll say, oh, you need to do this so you have money. But that may not be how you're wired. And so that's something that you have to kind of find out what your priorities are and think about that in this equation.
I'm going to answer the question of like, how does it stand out? What makes a college application stand out? And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to pull into the next question as well. What makes an admissions officer feel a student is right for their school? I've seen really bad applications get over the hump. I'm just going to be honest. I can usually look at a transcript and say, you know who would really like this transcript? This particular school, this particular school, this particular school. You know who's looking for this type of student? This particular. So for me, an application doesn't need to stand out. It needs to tell the truth about who you are, where you want to be, and why you feel like that's connected to the institution. Because I think a lot of times students are qualified. And they assume when they get that rejection back, and Akil, I think that's a brilliant idea. Maybe propose it to NACAC, that people should say, you got through the first round. We just realized that we weren't able to take you, whatever. But I think a lot of students are qualified and rejected, and they don't get that because they're approaching and they're like, hey, I want a ham sandwich. And they're like, we only got turkey here. That's it. And you're going back and being like, I should have done 3 more APs. I should have done da, 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 da. The college could not accommodate you. That's it. Had nothing to do with you. Like you wanted to come, you were from California. They needed a student from Iowa. That's it. If you had been born in Iowa, the decision would have been different. Okay. So I think sometimes I've seen bad applications get through. There's this myth that the college application is like an extra year. It's like year 5 is college application. Year 1, 2, 3, 4 matter, but year 5, what you put in your college application is equivalent. It's not. It's not. So, you know, it's not the same. So you could bomb the application and get in, or you could be super qualified and not get in. Do what you want to do. So how does an admissions officer feel that they're right for their school? Because they know what their school is looking for, because they're told, right? Hey, we need this amount of revenue. We need this amount of students in this program. Hey, last year we over admitted in this program. We under admitted in this program. Have that conversation with them, because they might say, listen, I understand you're applying for art, but did you know that there's this really cool major that we have that we're trying to fill right now? Tim, did I get that wrong?
You did not. You did not.
You know,
It's,
another plug for this great book.
what we say in our office is there's a difference between admission and enrollment management. Admission is we're going to admit people because they're smart, they're involved, and they're they are well prepared and they can come here. That's admission. Enrollment management is we are trying to put together a class with these institutional priorities, and so that's what a lot of the more selective schools are involved in, is enrollment management. A lot of younger admission professionals be like, why aren't these students getting in? They have 4.0s, they have perfect test scores, they have rigor, they're doing all these good things, but that's not what we're looking for. And so that's just something important to keep in mind.
We did have a question. When's the best time to
Let me just throw out one
Okay,
one thing to look at. I'll try to find it and put it on my Twitter, but University of Illinois puts out what they call their 10-day enrollment report, which basically shows you, I love it because there's a couple of graphs in there that's like, for the College of Education, this is the score range. For the College of Engineering, this is the score range. And you can see that enrollment and admission at this place varies hugely based on the college they've applied to, right? And it gives you some perspective in terms of, and now if you think about that across 3,000 colleges, right? The same kid, same grade might get rejected from engineering because it's popular, but admitted to education in the same college or across different colleges, right?
Yeah.
So I think, again, it reinforces the points that we've sort of been making of focus on you, do the best you can, and find places that you will do well, apply to those places. Don't get caught up in brand names and trying to turn yourself into something else to get in, because that's really hard to control. No matter what pretzel you try to twist yourself into, like you're not going to get into all of the places, especially if you're looking at places that tend to reject far more students than they apply. And that's only a few schools. That's one of the big problems here is looking at a real narrow subset of schools.
And I'm going to say this before I ask the questions that's here. Like, a lot of times people will be like, well, why didn't I get into this particular school? Why didn't I get in? It's like asking for the rejective. It's like asking, why didn't I win the lottery yesterday? So somebody with blue socks, like you'll see on YouTube, somebody will be like, I got in and this is my essay. I'm like, that's a horrible essay, but okay. And then everybody starts writing the same essay thinking, oh, that, to me, that's equivalent of blue socks, where you're talking about stats and like, oh, I have to have these particular stats in these particular classes and follow this formula. It's like I have to wear blue socks, walk in backwards, and say hello to the first person while I enter the 7-Eleven to get my lottery ticket, and then I'll win. And then you don't win for 15 years, and then you win one time. You're like, see, it worked. There's not, just because somebody, and I'm going to go into the IEC article from earlier, Tim, just because somebody got into a college does not mean that that person that helped them knows what they're doing to get into that college. That person could have been qualified before. That person would have always gotten in. That person may have had the resources. So this idea that you should construct your world around like, okay, I have students handing other students transcripts and saying, hey, look at this transcript, do what I do and you get in. And then they do it and they don't get in. They're like, what happened? Because it's not blue socks math, y'all. Like, it's figure out the college that values that. There was 2 questions that we had. When's the best time to ask for recommendation letters? Can you ask in your junior year? If you love a junior year teacher, I would plant the seed. Anybody else on that?
Some high schools have rules. Ask your high school counselor. Like, use your school counselor as a resource.
Thank you.
Some of them have rules, but early is good. That because the teacher, the favorite teacher always gets flooded. You got to be first on the line, because if I'm a teacher, I'm gonna set a hard limit. I can't do 700 recommendations a year, so yeah. I got to cut it off at like 12.
Okay. We have one more question. Time for one more question. You have, is it okay if a student, I love this term, chaotically switched between extracurriculars during high school because they didn't know what they were interested in?
Yes.
You know what? Go ahead.
No, yes, that is fine, because students have to figure out what they want to do. They may be interested in something. They're trying stuff out, so that's absolutely fine. We just want to know that you're applying yourself outside of the classroom. You know what I would also say to this in extracurricular activities, it's not just limited to what you do in a school. Some people have to watch younger siblings. They have to take care of elders. Some people have to help their family translate. Some people have jobs. Some people have started their own businesses. The list goes on and on. And so primarily what we're looking for as extracurricular activities is just like, what are you interested in? Also, I would say that, there's this myth that you have to be well-rounded. There's some very pointy students. There's some students say, this is what I love to do. This is what I'm committed to do. This is all that I want to do. And that's perfectly fine. I was reading a student the other day. He wants to go into physics. He talked everything all about physics. That's all he was about. And he would come here. The physics department would love him. What he would add to the rest of the community, I don't know. But, he may be the next best great mind in physics. And that may be the thing that got him into school. And so just, yes, you can change. There's no formula. If anything you take away from this conversation, there's no formula. If I do this, I do this, I do this, is going to produce this. That's just not a reality when you're thinking about, these some of the most selected schools are rejected schools in the country. You really put your best foot forward. As Akil said, challenge yourself academically. If you take a test and you feel good about it, submit it. If you don't, you may want to just go the test optional route, and just know that, there are lots of people who are successful who go to schools that maybe you never heard of. So, those are things to think about.
And also, you are so bad at this. Also, if you had more additional questions and just kind of wanted maybe a guide to college admissions, the Black Family's Guide to College Admissions, there's a lot in here that answers all of these questions. I just feel like I would get this book. That's what I would do. Akil, what's your last word?
My last word is, don't get too obsessed with brand. Be careful who you listen to.
Yes.
When Tim said pointy, it reminds me that there's businesses out there selling how to become a pointy student, because they're going to take that word that Tim just said, like, yo, I'm going to turn it into something, right? And then you had the other businesses like, we got the secret of making you well-rounded. So just be careful who you're listening to, right? Anybody who wants to sell you the secret sauce is probably worth being careful about, yes. Right? And so recognize that there are a lot of options. And at the end of the day, college is a 4-year experience, hopefully, on the pathway to a longer life experience. That 4-year experience is not the make or break. Just like your high school didn't define who you were as a person and set the rest of your life, nor will the college. So we can always self-correct. Don't get too obsessed about the perfect place.
I'm going to let you have the last word, but I'm going to say your name is going to be more powerful than whatever name is on your college sweatshirt. I did want to clarify my comment about 5 p.m. on a Sunday, because those of us who didn't grow up on the internet knows that the libraries close and whatever's in the encyclopedia is what you're writing on your report that day. But also I would just say that the secret of my practice as somebody who is an IEC technically trying to become a nonprofit as we speak is I just ask admissions officers, what do you think? Is this a good fit? No. What is it a good fit for? What program? So go to admissions officer. Never assume that somebody knows more than the person who's working admissions that year. Admissions changes every year because people move. Like people move, admissions officers change. So there's no formula, and just constantly ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. What was your takeaway, my friend?
My takeaway? Definitely that last part about being careful about who you listen to, because I hear some crazy stuff sometimes in the classroom with my classmates being like, you have to do this, this, this in order to get into this place. And I guess I hear a lot of rumors and people just talking about what they're doing and how they're definitely going to get into this place because their sibling did it or someone they knew did it. Also, the part that we were just talking about chaotically switching between extracurriculars, because I know A lot of my classmates are also a little freaked out about packing in a lot of the activities that they're doing this year because they just found out that they liked something this year. And that definitely resonated with me as well because I started doing new things this year. I started teaching and I actually found a lot of interest in that. And so, yeah, those are my takeaways.
And one last question. I know we're over time, but what's expected out of athletic applicants? They will tell you. That's NCAA will tell you. They'll say, we want this GPA, we want this, that, even if you're not going scholarship, even if you're doing walk-in. So don't even worry about that. Okay. If you have additional questions, how can people find y'all? Let's do that. Tim, I'm going to hold the book up for you.
Hey, if you have any questions, you can find us at Understanding the Choices. It's a website. You can buy the book. You can also email us at info@understandingthechoices.com. Okay. Black Families Guide to College Admission. I have one too, Jen.
Yeah, but you should be putting it up all the time. I got you, girl. I'll get you one of these. I got you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a great time. It's a great gift for, oh my God, is this a great holiday gift or not? I mean, look at this. Let me QVC this real quick. All the answers in one book. Wow. Tim, thank you for writing this book because it allows a conversation to continue. Okay.
Yes.
Akil, how can people find you?
Thankfully, my name is fairly unique, Akil Bello. If you Google me, you will probably find me in one of the places. I also have akilbello.com and I live on Twitter. So, I'm on the social medias. It ain't hard to find me. You can also go to my website. So look forward. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up. I'm happy to answer questions via whatever way you find to contact me.
Back. And then, you can text to be notified when we go live. Thank you all so much and continue to submit questions. Tim, Akil, my friend, you did such a good job. Let's give it up for our student host. So many great questions today. All right, I'm going to hit end broadcast. All right.